Chapter 13 of Alice, or The Wages of Sin. This is a Librivox recording. All Librivox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit librivox.org. Recording by Shasta, Oakland, California. Alice, or The Wages of Sin, by Frederic Werden Pangborn, Chapter 13. Be sure your sin will find you out. To eyes which spoke and said, sleep, dreams, and death, we are only gods that answer prayer. With the faint gleam of the tender evening light there came a human form, barefooted, bareheaded, with broken limbs of golden chains gleaming here and there upon her limbs, with white robes hanging heavily, soaked with dews and rains, and fell at the feet of Thanatos. She had fled, even as her mother, nearly 20 years before, had fled from her home with her burden of shame and her breaking heart, to bury her crushed soul and outraged womanhood in oblivion. So Alice now fled from all that was dear to her. In the short hour which had turned her happiness to agony, she had lost all care for life, all yearning for friendships, all desire for love. One idea alone now filled her mind, an idea which had never before come to her. Now she cared not to see ever again the faces of those to whom she had been so dear. The kind friends, the tender foster parents, the once beloved husband, were all alike to her objects of terror. But one idea filled her soul, and one creature alone in all the universe had a place in her heart. She yearned for her mother. To this one person of all the universe she yearned to go, and she was dead. With a sense that God had entirely deserted her, she felt that mother, and mother alone, would have taken her in, loathsome as she had become in her own sight, and given her comfort. She had now, out of all the mass of confused thoughts which filled her brain, but one idea. Hurrying along in the chilly winter night, she bore in her hand the card which the horror-bringing messenger had left. As she hurried along the streets, she was conscious that it was a gala night, that the store windows were ablaze with lights, that happy people were jostling past her as they bore their Christmas burdens to happy homes, and that the world was gay. The world was happy, but it was no longer her world. For her, there was now no world, past, present, or future. She was the one of all the world who was unlike all the rest, and a terrible sense of loneliness came upon her. She met a party of bad women in company with worse men. She was lower than they. How they would laugh in scorn could they know her story. As she passed them, one of the men spoke to her, but she was not offended. Why should she be? She had fallen lower than he or his companions. You smile at her illogical ideas, but would the world tomorrow be more just to her than she was to herself? On she goes through the streets, turning here and there as she notes by the lettering on the lamp posts the course she wishes to take. At last she has reached her destination. She enters the wretched den of Isaac, and inquires for Cora. The old man informs her that he does not know who she is. He is frightened, for he is not certain that this visit may not forebode some trouble for himself, and when she abruptly tells him her name and her errand, he is only too glad to do that which she asks, and which he alone can do. Donning his old hat and coat, the aged man goes forth with her into the night, and something of pity, if not regret, touches him as he looks at the woebegone face of the girl whom he has helped to ruin. Through the streets together they go, the once proud and happy lady of refinement and culture, and the sordid Jew. On they go, Alice walking in silence, while Isaac leads the way. He does not understand what this journey means, but he is afraid not to obey, so on they go, until at last they come to a graveyard. Tracing the way carefully among the stones and mounds, old Isaac leads her to a remote corner of the Platte, and, by a sign, indicates a certain grave. "Are you sure?" she asks. "I am, my lady, for I followed her here myself, nigh 20 years ago, and marked the spot," he replies. "Very well, you may go," she says, and hands him her purse. Mechanically his sordid hands grasp his god, and he moves away, wondering whether he has done a wise thing or not. He is gone, and she is alone at last with the only thing in the universe for which she cares, her mother's ashes. She feels a sense of peace stealing over her shocked and anguished soul, and fancies she feels a presence near her. She knows it is her mother, for it allays the terrible yearning which has been her agony this dreadful night. She is not certain just how long it may have been since she fled from that horror, but it has been a long time, anyhow. This is her mother's grave. "Mother, mother," she keeps repeating the soft word over to herself, and it seems to do her good. And she never knew her, never knew this sweet woman who loved her, this long-suffering woman who died for her in the hope that she might be saved to an honorable life. Perhaps, after all, it is better as it is. Had she learned her mother's story in a different way, she might have wronged her in her heart. Now she adores her as a saint. It is not so dark as it was. Morning must be near. The thought of daylight brings a dread to her heart. She must not wait so long. Her mother must come soon and take her. She feels that this will be so, and that all she has to do is to wait. It is chilly, but she hardly notes it, and a drowsy feeling is stealing over her. She seems to be half alive and half in a trance-like state, and again she feels that gentle presence. How soothing it is, how full of restfulness. She must have had some feeling as this when, a little babe, she fell asleep in her mother's arms. She is asleep and dreaming, but no, that vision was too vivid to be a dream. Fair, sweet face, tender eyes, this is no dream. It is mother. A soft sigh, and Alice is asleep, peaceful, quiet sleep, such as comes only to the innocent of heart and pure of soul. They found her next morning, dead, in the neglected corner of the burial ground upon one of the pauper graves. Neither Mr. Dojere nor his wife ever knew why she had gone there to die. Only God and her mother held that secret. They buried her beside her false husband, for it was best that it should so be done, and the horrid secret of their lives was buried with them. The grave keeps its own counsel, so long as men disturb it not, and there were none who cared to invoke secrets from these graves. So let them rest. She, the fair, unsullied soul, so fit to live, so fit to die, prepared for either state. He, the noble and ignoble, who thought that repentance alone, without reparation, could atone for wilful sin, and of whom it is best to say, no further seek his merits to disclose, or draw his frailties from the dread abode. There they alike in trembling hope repose, the bosom of his Father and his God. The tale is told. In the quiet of the grave, among the silent multitudes of bygone years, crumble the remains of Albert Thornbury. In the narrow bed next to him lies the woman whom he loved with tenderness of manhood's strong passion, and whom he knew, too late, could never be his wife, whom he blasted in her womanhood, and against whom he sinned, unconsciously but beyond redress. She lies in the wife's place, but she is not his wife. In the far corner of the same plat, unknown, unmourned, forgotten, is another grave, and in it lies the woman who is his wife, and against whom he sinned guiltily. 3 graves, containing the wrecks of 3 lives destroyed by a boy's sinful mistake. Be sure your sin will find you out. Men repeat the words often, but they do not believe them to be true. Could we raise the impenetrable curtain of time and see the scene behind, could we foresee the end of our bad beginnings, this might become an almost sinless world. Could the thoughtless girl, coquetting in her innocent sense of safety, toying with the double-edged tools which, sooner or later, cut back and rend the heart with merciless stabs, blighting the life and making a double terror of death, foresee the end, she would be more careful of herself and value less than she does the empty gratifications of vanity. Could the venerated pastor, seeking the companionship of the women of his congregation, ever too readily to fall in love with their father confessor, meaning perhaps no harm, foresee the intricate meshes of the toils into which he is weaving himself, he would be more circumspect in his conduct. Could the young man, lightly trifling with the loves of women, knowing little of the power of that delicious poison which destroys body, soul, and mind, know the danger which lurks behind the golden glories of such delights, and see the work which time will develop, he would seek his mother oftener, and the soft-skinned beauties of his choice would lose, for him, many of their charms. Could the man of business, misapplying the trusts in his charge, a little here, a little there, falsifying his accounts, robbing this one to deceive that one, covering his tracks skillfully, and, as he thinks, forever foresee the end, the disgrace, the ruin, the never to be rectified wrong which he is doing himself, his dealings would be honest, and his conduct above reproach and honorable. We see it not, we have no faith in the words. They apply to others, but not to ourselves. Our sin will not find us out. Albert Thornbury little thought that the sin of 20 years' oblivion would never come back to him. Little did he suspect that in the very moment of his greatest happiness, when all the troubles of his life were at rest, when he had at last found the one thing needful to fill the vacant place in his man's heart, little did he think that at this moment of self-satisfaction the horrible truth would be forced upon him that his sin had found him out. And more terrible even than this comes the dreadful truth of that other awful warning, the truth of which is proven in moral and physical life at all times, that the sins of the fathers shall be visited upon the children, innocent and guilty alike, to bear the yoke of sorrow and to feel the stern grip of the hand of punishment, cruel, unjust, diabolical, no doubt, but a fact. We see it in the everyday meeting of our fellows. The morally warped, the socially degraded, the sinfully diseased, the hopelessly insane, all bear witness of this dreadful truth. Whether there is justice or sense in such a law, whether it be divine or devil-bred, we cannot say, but it is a law, an inexorable, terrible, awful fact. Be sure your sin will find you out. If not during your life, perhaps in the lives of those whom you leave behind you, to struggle through their lives, handicapped by your folly, cursed by your sins. Could the millions today laboring under the blight placed upon them by their fathers behold as in a panorama the deeds for which they now are doing penance, being innocent themselves, there might be an uprising of indignation, a pouring out of the vials of wrath, a panic of cursings and reproach, such as the God of the Jews himself could scarcely hope to hurl from his high throne above. Be sure your sin will find you out. This has a significance more than personal, wider in its application than the laws of nations or the religions of the world. The man who loves his honor, the man who loves his posterity, the man who loves mankind, and if one be not such a man as this, he is but little higher than the breeding bull or the protozoon, which parts from its budded offspring, never to meet it again, must ever bear this truth in mind. If he is sure that his sin will find him out, reading the injunction in its broadest meaning, he will be careful lest he sin. These words carry with them no promise of pardon, no hint of forgiveness, no hope of absolution. They are plain, terse, and not to be misunderstood. They are the embodiment of all warnings against wrongdoing, and the succinct codification of unalterable, inexorable, passionless law. Be sure your sin will find you out. End of chapter 13. End of Alice, or the Wages of Sin, by Frederic Werden Pangborn.